Hello, friends, and welcome to Sci-Fi Traveler. I'm back with another exciting episode. In this episode, we'll hear the incredible story of Theodore and Valentina. Grab your coffee and sit back. Sci-Fi Traveler is about to begin. Enjoy the show, friends. 3 cycles in, Theodore had stopped flinching at the crystal. The court of the Sala wasn't built so much as grown. Great singing spires of quartz that hummed when the wind moved through them, so every corridor sounded like a wet finger circling the rim of a glass. His first week, he jumped at it constantly. Now he hummed along, usually off-key, which the courtiers found either charming or treasonous, depending on the day. He was humanity's lone envoy here, which mostly meant he was very good at standing in rooms, saying nothing in 17 dialects. He'd learned their songs, their seven-pronged cutlery, the exact half-second a bow should last. He'd also learned to talk to himself in the dark, because the alternative was forgetting the sound of his own language. "Big day, Theodore," he'd tell the ceiling each morning. "Try not to start a war before lunch." So far, a flawless record. And he'd learned Valentina. Not understood. Learned the way you learn weather. The queen's skin was pale as lantern glass, catching the light of the hanging lamps until she seemed lit from inside, and her ears tapered to soft points, the single small thing that marked her as not quite human. Everything else was unbearably human. That was the trouble. She ruled with a calm that never quite climbed all the way to her eyes, and somewhere across 3 years, that calm had started letting him in increments so small he hadn't noticed until he was thoroughly, idiotically lost. The night of the Convergence Festival, the Great Hall emptied like a tide going out. The bioluminescent gardens breathed their slow blue light beyond the colonnade, the music drifting somewhere far off, and Theodore was halfway through congratulating himself on another war-free evening when a hand closed around his sleeve and drew him into the shadow of a pillar. "You're doing it again," Valentina murmured. "The smiling. You smile when you're frightened. It's very strange. It's a human thing. We bare our teeth and call it friendly. Confuses everyone." His heart was doing something undignified. "Why are we behind a pillar?" She didn't answer right away. She leaned close, her breath warm against his ear, and the spires hummed their low glass note, and the lanterns swayed, and Valentina, the queen of the salon, whispered, "I'm pregnant. I'm carrying your child, human." The words landed like a struck bell. Everything kept moving. The light, the distant music, the humming walls. And Theodore stood perfectly still inside it, as though the universe had handed him something made of glass and was waiting to see if he'd drop it. "That's," he said, and stopped. "I had a whole speech ready for, we should stop seeing each other. This is not that. No. Is it, can that even—" He gestured between them, a vague, helpless arc. "We are not the same. Different stars. Different everything." Apparently, the everything is more negotiable than the diplomats believed. Her mouth twitched, the closest she ever came to a laugh, and beneath it he saw the thing she was hiding. Not triumph, not strategy, just fear, raw and bright, the same fear running through him. She was terrified. She had simply learned, the way queens do, to wear it like jewelry. He knew the law. He'd memorized it his second week. An heir of mixed blood was either a miracle or a death sentence, prophecy or treason, and the court was a web of knives that would decide which the instant they knew. For her, for him, for something the size of a held breath. "They'll come for us," he said quietly. "Yes, both of us. Yes." She looked at him then, fully, the calm finally reaching her eyes and finding him there. "I didn't tell you so you would save me, Theodore. I told you because I was tired of being the only one holding it. And that somehow was the thing that steadied him. Not bravery, the simple arithmetic of 2 people instead of 1. He took her hand, pale, cool, trembling so faintly only he could feel it, and laced his fingers through hers, and found that his own were shaking too, and that this was fine. "Then we hold it together," he said, "and when they come, we'll smile at them, bare our teeth, call it friendly." Valentina did laugh, finally, soft, surprised, entirely human. The lanterns swayed. The music drifted in from far away, and the secret between them stopped being a thing they were afraid of, and quietly in the dark behind a singing pillar became a thing they had chosen. The trouble with a secret in the court of the Ceylon was that the walls listened. Not metaphorically. The quartz spires resonated with sound, storing it in faint harmonic echoes that older courtiers could read like fingerprints. Theodore had learned this his second month, the embarrassing way, when a chamberlain repeated back a private joke he'd muttered to a soup bowl. Ever since, he'd done his important thinking in the gardens, where the bioluminescent fronds drowned everything in a soft electric hum. So that was where he paced now, 3 days after the pillar, rehearsing speeches to no one. "Esteemed council," he tried, "you'll be thrilled to learn that interspecies diplomacy has gone extremely well." He winced. Too well. A nearby frond pulsed, as if unconvinced. "Yes, I agree. Terrible. Thank you." "Talking to the plants again," Valentina said, stepping out of the colonnade's shadow. By daylight she wore the calm, like armor, every plate polished, and only Theodore now knew how thin it was. "My father did that, near the end." "Was your father also expecting a diplomatic incident with legs?" "My father expected betrayal from everyone. He was usually right." She joined him at the rail, close but not touching, two officials admiring the foliage. "Which is why we must be careful. The Concord faction would call this child an abomination. The sworn would call it a prophecy and try to crown it before it could walk. Both end with knives. They simply disagree about the eulogy." "Comforting. You should write greeting cards." He glanced at her. "How long until it shows?" "Ceylon gestation is not yours." A pause he was learning to dread. "It is faster, visibly so, within a cycle, perhaps less." A cycle, 41 days. He did the arithmetic and felt the floor of his stomach relocate. "Right. So we have roughly the lifespan of a houseplant to overthrow 1,000 years of blood purity law." "Lovely. I'll cancel my evening plans." That earned the twitch again, the almost laugh, and he was beginning to suspect he'd reorganize his entire personality around chasing it. Then the twitch faded. "There is another path," she said carefully. "The court physician, Henry, the one your people sent, has studied us for years. There are ways to make a thing quietly not have happened. No one would know. No knives, no prophecy." She did not look at him. "I am the queen. I should be able to say such a thing without my voice doing that." Her voice had done that. A small fracture, there and gone. "Do you want that?" he asked. "I want us to live." Which was not an answer, and they both heard the not answer sitting between them like a third person. Theodore leaned on the rail. Somewhere beyond the wall, the city's lift spires caught the last light. Slow elevators of grown crystal ferrying citizens up toward homes that glowed like trapped constellations. He'd hated this place once. Now the thought of leaving it, of leaving her, did something inconvenient to his chest. "Here's the thing about being the only human for 9 light years," he said. "You get very honest because there's no one to perform for." "So," he turned to face her, "I don't want the quiet version. I think we'd survive it and spend the rest of our lives in different rooms of the same regret. But it's not my body and it's 1,000 times not my throne, and I would rather lose the argument than win it by pretending I get a vote I don't." She studied him for a long moment, the lanterns of the city coming up one by one behind her, like the sky was taking attendance. "You are a very strange diplomat, Theodore. It's been mentioned, 17 dialects, all of them say so. Henry comes to me tomorrow for the monthly report." She straightened and the armor went back on, but differently now, not hiding from him, just facing outward, toward the things that wanted them dead. "I will tell him there is nothing to report, and then we will need a third thing, because the council convenes in a cycle, and congratulations, it's a scandal, is not a survivable announcement." "A third thing," he agreed, "between abomination and prophecy." "Yes, no pressure, but those are the only 2 slots history's been offering for 1,000 years. Then we will," Valentina said, with the first real smile he had ever seen reach her eyes, terrifying and bright, "have to grow a third slot. We are rather good at growing things here. Above them, The spires hummed, keeping every word. Henry arrived for the monthly report smelling of antiseptic and bad news, which on him were the same smell. He was the only other human for 9 light years, and the novelty had curdled into the weary intimacy of 2 countrymen sharing one kettle. "The Queen's vitals are unusual," Henry announced, dropping into a garden chair without asking. He set his diagnostic slate on a knee, its surface scrolling green glyphs that bloomed like frost. "Elevated metabolic resonance." The Spire medics flagged it. "They think she's fighting an infection." "I think they're idiots, but I'm paid to agree with them. So." Theodore arranged his face into mild diplomatic interest, a skill that had taken him a year in all spontaneous joy. "And what do you think?" "I think," Henry said slowly, "that I've scanned that woman every month for 4 years, and her resonance only spikes like this for one reason in the cell on literature." He looked up. He had the tired, kind eyes of a man who had already done the math and was now watching Theodore do it. Congratulations would be the wrong word. So would condolences. I'm reaching for something in between. The garden hummed. A frond pulsed, traitorously cheerful. "Henry, I haven't filed it. The report says mild seasonal resonance. Monitoring advised," which is the medical equivalent of looking at the ceiling and whistling. He rubbed his face. "Do you have any idea what they'll do? Not to her, to you, to me. There's a clause in the Concord Charter. They call it the cleansing of the vessel. It's exactly as charming as it sounds." "I'm aware of the Charter." "You read the Charter for fun?" "I read everything. There's not a lot of nightlife 9 light years out." Theodore sat down across from him because his legs had quietly resigned. "How long can your report hold?" "Until the next Spire medic with ambition presses an ear to the right wall." Henry's slate chirped. He silenced it without looking. "These people record everything in the architecture. The only reason the court doesn't already know is that the festival scrambled 3 days of acoustics. That window is closing. Days, not cycles." A new voice slid into the garden like a draft under a door. "What window?" They turned. An elder stood at the colonnade. Adrian, of the conquered faction, all silver robes and a smile so smooth you could skate on it. He held a cup of something steaming and the comfortable posture of a man who had heard exactly enough. "Adrian," Theodore said warmly, while his pulse attempted to leave through his ears. "We were debating human medicine. My colleague believes our species ages because of a flaw in our cells. I maintain it's the paperwork." "How droll." Adrian's gaze drifted, unhurried, to Henry's slate, then to the rail where the Queen had stood the night before. "The Queen has been unwell, I hear. Resonant. The sworn are already calling it an omen." A delicate sip. "Foolish, of course. Omens are for peasants. Facts are for the rest of us. And facts have a way of resonating, don't they? Until even the dullest ear can read them off the stone." "Poetic," Henry muttered. "You should write greeting cards." Theodore nearly laughed, which would have been fatal. Instead, he stood and put himself between Adrian and the slate without appearing to. "Was there something you needed, Elder?" "Only the air." Adrian's smile widened a fraction. "The gardens are the one place in this court where the walls forget a man. So few honest conversations survive a building that remembers." He turned to go, then paused almost gently. "Whatever it is you are growing out here, envoy, I would harvest it before the season turns. Things left in the ground too long tend to be dug up by someone else." And he drifted off, silver robes whispering against the crystal. The silence afterward had weight. "He knows," Henry said. "He suspects. There's a difference, and the difference is exactly how much time we have." Theodore watched the empty colonnade where the smile had been. He came to the gardens on purpose, the one room that forgets. He wanted to threaten us where the walls couldn't testify against him. Despite everything, a thin, reckless grin crept up, which means he's afraid of being recorded too. "Henry, everyone in this beautiful, paranoid building is terrified of the walls." Henry stared at him. "Why are you smiling?" "You do that. It's deeply unsettling." "Because," Theodore said, "I think I just found our third thing." The third thing took shape over 4 sleepless nights in the one place that wouldn't remember them. "The whole court is built on fear of the walls," Theodore said, drawing in the dirt of a flower bed with a stick, which was the closest thing to a secure terminal he had. Everyone whispers in the gardens. Everyone lies in the throne room, because the throne room keeps every word forever. Adrian as good as told me, the recorded truth is the only truth that survives. So we stop whispering. Valentina watched the stick move. You want to announce it? In the throne chamber, on the stone that forgets nothing. I want you to. You're the queen. The walls have recorded 1,000 years of your bloodline lying through their teeth about purity. Let them record just once a queen telling the truth. He looked up. If it's whispered, Adrian controls when and how it comes out. Abomination or prophecy, his pick. If you say it first, loud on the record in front of everyone, you take both slots away from him. It's not a scandal he uncovered, it's a thing you chose. And when the Concord invokes the cleansing, then they invoke it on the official record too, in front of the whole court, against a queen who did nothing but tell them the truth. He hesitated. It's not safe. I want to be clear, I know it's not safe. I've run the numbers, and the numbers are rude. She was quiet for a long moment, her pale hands folded in the lantern light. My mother whispered, she said finally. Her whole reign. She died still whispering, I think. I have spent 40 years learning to say nothing beautifully. A breath. I am so tired of being beautiful about it. For what it's worth, Theodore said, you're catastrophically bad at saying nothing when it counts. You told me behind a pillar with the festival barely cold. Worst kept secret in the quadrant. I had a moment of weakness. You had a moment of being a person. Don't let the throne talk you out of it. Henry, who had been pretending to examine a fern and failing, finally turned around. I want it on the record that I think this is insane. There. Now it's on the record, which I'm told is the whole point. He crouched by the flower bed. But if you're doing it with proof. I can put the genetic scan into the Spire archive directly. Bypass the medics. Resonance signatures don't lie, and the sworn can't call it false prophecy if the stone itself confirms a healthy mixed blood heir. We turn their surveillance into your witness. Romantic, Theodore said. Our love story, ratified by a building. Most stable relationship in the court, Henry agreed. It at least keeps its record straight. Valentina almost smiled, then didn't, because the fear had come back into the room and sat down with them. There is a thing I have not said. She looked at Theodore, and the calm cracked down the middle. If the council turns, they will not exile me. Queens are not exiled. Queens are inconvenient that way. And you, they will not waste a trial on a human. You understand what I am telling you? I am asking you to stand beside me in a room where the most likely outcome is that we do not leave it. The garden hummed its oblivious, cheerful hum. Theodore considered the dirt drawing, the crude little spire he'd scratched, the two stick figures beside it he hadn't meant to draw and couldn't stop looking at. When I took this post, he said slowly, they gave me a speech about being humanity's bridge to the stars. I thought it was nonsense. Bridges get walked on. Nobody thanks the bridge. He set the stick down. But I keep thinking, a bridge is just the thing that decides two sides aren't going to stay strangers. And I'd rather be that than safe. I'm in. I was in behind the pillar. I've just been catching up to it since. She reached across the flower bed and pressed her palm flat against his, dirt and all, the way her people did when words ran out. Then tomorrow, she said, I will go into the room that remembers everything, and I will give it something worth remembering. Tomorrow, he agreed. His voice did the thing hers had done 3 days ago, the small fracture, and for once he let it. Try not to start a war before the toasts. No promises. And there finally was the laugh, soft, frightened, all hers, rising up into the spires where the patient crystal caught it and held it, the way it held everything, saving the sound of a queen laughing for whoever came after to find. The throne chamber on a council morning was the loudest quiet Theodore had ever stood in. 200 courtiers in tiered crescents, the great spires overhead like frozen lightning, every one of them, people and stone both, leaning in to record. He stood at the foot of the dais in his good envoy coat, the one he wore for funerals and treaties, which he'd decided were close enough. Valentina took the throne the way she took everything, beautifully, calmly, lying with her whole body about how fast her heart was racing. Only Theodore, who had learned her weather, could see it. To everyone else, she was simply the queen. Adrian rose first because of course he did. "Before the queen addresses us," he said, silk over a blade, "I would ask the court to note her recent ill health. Resonance fevers cloud the judgment. We would not want anything spoken today to be misremembered by the walls." A good move. Theodore felt it land. Pre-discredit the recording before it existed. Tidy. Valentina did not rise to it. She simply stood, and the chamber's hum dropped half a tone, the way it did when the spires turned their attention. "I am not ill," she said, and her voice went out across the stone and into it, scoring itself into 1,000 years of archive. "I am with child." The silence that followed had a texture. You could have leaned on it. "The father," she continued, unhurried now, the tremor gone where even Theodore couldn't see it, "is Theodore, the human envoy. I tell you this on the record, in the room that keeps every word so no one may later claim to have discovered it or to own it. It is not an omen. It is not an abomination. It is my child, and I am your queen, and those two facts coexist whether the charter likes it or not." Then everything happened at the speed courts, always save for disasters. Adrian's smile didn't slip. It sharpened. "Then the queen confesses to defilement of the bloodline." He lifted his hand in the old ritual shape. "Under the Concord Charter, I invoke the cleansing of the—" "I'd hold that hand right there," Henry said, stepping out of the crescent where he'd been impersonating furniture. He had his slate up. "Sorry, human. Terrible manners. But before you cleanse anything, you might want the data because I've just pushed it into the Spire archive, and the walls are reading it back as we speak." The hum changed. It climbed, harmonics stacking, and along the base of every spire, a band of pale light woke and scrolled. Resonance glyphs, the genetic signature unspooling into the stone, which sang it the way it sang everything, without opinion, without mercy, true. "A viable heir," Henry narrated into the rising chord. "Mixed lineage, healthy, stable resonance. Stabler than half this room, frankly. The building agrees with me. Take it up with the building." Adrian's hand stayed in the air, slowly becoming ridiculous. "The archive can be falsified by a human with no archive access in a building that hates me?" Henry spread his hands. "I'm flattered. I can barely work the kettle." A ripple went through the sworn, the prophecy crowd, the dangerous, beautiful turn. Half the room deciding this was a miracle, the other half a crime. Adrian in the exact center, losing control of which story the walls would keep. Because that was the trap. He'd built his power on the recorded truth being the only truth. And now the truth was recorded, and it wasn't his. "This changes the succession," an elder of the sworn said slowly, with the gleam of a man redrawing his loyalties. "A child of two worlds. The walls have never sung such a thing before?" "No," Valentina agreed. "They have not, which is precisely why I did not whisper it to them in the dark." She looked once at Theodore, and he gave her the most undiplomatic grin of his career, right there on the permanent record for the stone and history to keep. "Some things," she said to the chamber, "deserve to be said out loud." Adrian lowered his hand at last. The ritual shape unmade itself, but his eyes found Theodore's across the chamber, and there was nothing smooth in them now, only the cold arithmetic of a man who had lost this room and was pricing the next one. The council did not erupt. It did something worse and quieter. It began in 200 murmuring voices to decide, and under all of it the spires hummed on, recording, 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 keeping the morning a queen stopped whispering for anyone who came after to hear. The council took 11 days to decide, which by Celan standards was indecent haste. They had 1,000 years of charter to unmake and no precedent for it. So in the end, they did what frightened institutions always do. They wrote a new rule and pretended it had always been there. The heir of two worlds was declared not abomination, not prophecy, but Selaan, full stop, with a clause so dry it could have started a fire. Theodore laughed every time he read it. 1,000 years of blood purity, undone by a paragraph that mostly concerned itself with inheritance tax. Adrian did not fight it, which worried Theodore more than fighting would have. The man simply receded, silver robes and smooth smile intact, into the long game he always played. But the walls had his invocation now, the moment he'd raised his hand to cleanse a healthy child. And that recording followed him down every corridor like a smell he couldn't wash off. The sworn would not forget it, neither would the spires. In a court built on what the stone remembered, Adrian had been caught on the wrong side of a song. He kept his title and lost the only thing that had ever mattered here, which was the benefit of the doubt. "He'll try something," Theodore said, watching him cross the far gardens one evening. "Of course he will," Valentina said. She was enormous by then. Selene gestation did not believe in subtlety. "And the walls will hear it. We did not make him harmless, Theodore. We made him recorded. It is the most one can do to a clever man. Make honesty his only safe option. You should write greeting cards. Henry has offered me a partnership. We are calling it Brutal Truths. He does the medical ones." The child came on an ordinary morning in the loud, cheerful hum of the birthing spire, while Theodore, who had read every Selene text and was therefore exactly as useless as every father in history, held a hand he was fairly sure he was supposed to be the calm one for, and wasn't. She was small and furious and entirely herself, with her mother's pale lantern skin and ears in soft, definite points, and, the medics noted, eyes that were unmistakably, stubbornly round. "Well," Theodore managed, when they put her in his arms, and his whole carefully diplomatic interior fell over at once. "Hello, I genuinely do not have a speech. First time in 3 cycles. Name her," Valentina said, exhausted and luminous. He'd thought about this. "Nora," he said. "It means light on Earth, and it's short, which she will thank us for when she has to sign treaties." They named her Nora, and the spires recorded it. The first name in 1,000 years the walls could not sort into one bloodline or the other, and so kept whole. 3 cycles after that, counting in cycles now, he'd stopped translating. Theodore stood on the same garden rail where it had all tipped over and talked to himself in the dark the way he always had, except he wasn't lonely doing it anymore. "Big day, Theodore," he told the glowing fronds. "Try not to start a war before lunch." A frond pulsed. "I know. Flawless record. Let us not jinx it." He understood now what he hadn't, that first frightened year of saying nothing beautifully in 17 dialects. He'd come here to be a bridge and spent 3 cycles terrified of being walked on. But a bridge wasn't the thing that got crossed. It was the thing that decided 2 sides got to stop being strangers. And you didn't build it by standing very still and giving nothing away. You built it the stupid human way, by saying the true thing out loud in the room that remembered, and letting it cost what it cost. Behind him the colonnade lit. Valentina came out with Nora on her hip, the child already reaching for the lanterns as if light were a thing you could take. Valentina drew close the way she had that first night, and leaned in until her breath was warm against his ear. "I have something to tell you, human," she whispered, and his heart lurched on perfect cue, and he turned to find her grinning. Fully, openly, the calm gone for good, replaced by something far better at reaching her eyes. "Dinner's getting cold," she said. He laughed, and it went up into the spires, and the patient crystal caught it and held it with all the rest. The whisper, the counsel, the small, furious cry of a girl with round eyes, keeping the sound of 3 strangers who had decided, on the record and out loud, to be a family for whoever came after to find. Friends, we've reached the end of another sci-fi traveler story. Before we wrap up, I have a small favor to ask. Don't forget to like the story, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our next story. See you in our next episode. Goodbye, friends.